It's the next level.
You. What a mess. You should have stayed in your hole. You want the good news, Frank? This pain is only temporary. Break him. Break him and then finish him.
Panels to Pixels, The Punisher Season 2, Episodes 9 and 10 review. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Mark.
And I'm Steve.
And today we're actually talking about episodes 9 and 10 of season 2. And these are actually really good episodes from what I could check out when I was watching them.
Yeah, they're really exciting, and episode 9 really sets up episode 10. So these two really work in conjunction together really well. But episode 9 is called Flustercluck, which that's a hard word to say, but we used to say something similar in the military. This episode opens with Frank, and he's returning to the trailer to find Amy, Curtis, and Madani all there. If you remember the last episode, at the end of episode 8, we had Frank at his wife's grave, and everyone else had joined together there at the trailer. So there's a lot of dialogue here, but it reveals some things about Frank that we know and some things that we didn't know. And it's just really cool. And in fact, I'll talk more about this conversation in the trailer in my top fives, but we see Mr. Schultz has come to New York. He meets with his son. His son is this politician, who's homosexual, and they have these pictures of him with another man. Those are the pictures that Amy and the Punisher have, And then he also meets with John Pilgrim. We see he tells John to put out a contract, a bounty on the Punisher and the girl. And then we get to see Curtis recruit some fellow vets to help find Billy and his crew. And they've been murdering and robbing people all over the city. And so we're seeing all of our stories are now starting to come together. And which is one thing that we've been building to this entire season. We've seen all these separate storylines. Now we're starting to see them kind of come together.
Which was my complaint the last couple of episodes, I believe, too.
Yeah, everything's just been so sporadic and spread out, yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like everything was lost, and I guess they've had to figure out how to get everything all together at once. So we should get on to our top 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. My number 5 is just the military way that Billy kind of runs his crew as they're going around the city, and from the radio reports we hear, I think they hit like 3 or 4 locations in a 24-hour period, and they kill a bunch of people. He's using some of those same terms that he used when he was in the military. The difference, of course, is that they're killing everyone, and when he's talking to his crew, he still doesn't remember that he's the one that killed Frank's family or had Frank's family killed. He doesn't remember that. So he thinks Frank just doesn't like him, or he can't figure out why Frank wants to kill him. But that my number 5 is just that the military way he's kind of handling his crew, and the fact that later we're going to see Curtis pick up on some of these terms that he's using and that Billy is using in his radio transmissions.
Yeah, Amy actually brings them up when they're honing in.
Yeah. She asks about the Molotov thing. I think they say something about that the situation is Molotov or something like that. And she's like, What does that mean? And he tells her that was a term they used. So
my number 5 would be the big scene with Billy and the doctor. The sex was violent, as well as the violence that Billy's crew put on others as they are attacking people. It was just raw and rough. Sounds to me like Billy is getting too confident in himself and his crew, because the way he's talking to them, bringing them up a little bit, it seemed even more overzealous than what he was when he had his memories and he was in charge of in the first season, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's very frenetic the way he's acting. He's very frenzied. Like in the first season, we saw him very calm and cool and collected whenever he was working, when he had that one crew when they killed Madani's partner, you know, and he's laying out the missions. And here it almost seems a little like he has the memory of how to do it, but he's very, more crazed at it.
Yeah. It's like, it's muscle memory more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing how to get these guys organized, get them riled up, and then send them out on a mission. But he doesn't know why or how or where he got these things from in some ways.
Yeah. So my number 4 is that conversation there in the trailer when Frank first comes back. He sees the door. He sees Madani through the window. He comes into the trailer and the kid is telling him, oh, she wants to take you to prison and all this. And then he sits down and he has this very introspective kind of way of talking about how he felt and what he's doing. And I loved, there was one line and I didn't write it down. I should have written it down, where he says something about the things I can do. And he's starting to realize that even though he's not a superhero, he still there's things about him that he can do things that other people can't. He can switch off things. And this fact that he kind of doesn't know what he is. He doesn't know. Is he a villain? Is he a hero? Is he a monster? Is he not? You know, he's the Punisher. That's what he is. And he's kind of caressing's a bad word, but he's kind of like he's looking at his flak vest there, his bulletproof vest with the Punisher logo on it. And he's very starting to understand this role that he's playing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, it's pretty much the first time we actually see the vest prominent throughout the show, and more so than last season.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think.
For sure.
Yeah. Especially with the blood written all over it. So it's like kind of making a mark on it. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And especially the fact that it was more, like you said, it was more an introspective look of himself. And he's stating that to Madani, which comes out later on with the doctor. But yeah, it was a really good scene in a sense where it humanizes the character.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it makes you appreciate the person for who they are, not somebody who's like superhuman or anything, and the reason why he's doing these things. Yeah. So yeah, it was very good.
So what's your number 4?
My number 4 would be Amy and Curtis's conversation in the mobile home. We get to see them getting along and wanting to know about each other a little bit, but then Amy leaves because Curtis won't let her come with him to the group. She needed to get out. She needed to be needed, I guess, not to be used. She felt like she was being used as a pawn in some way, not being included into what's going on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's one of those things where you can definitely tell that Curtis isn't a parent. Because, you know, what's the first thing your kids are going to do if you tell them to stay put? They're going to go. Well, you know, they're going to leave. And so he should have just realized that was what was going to happen. And my number 3 is kind of right into that same kind of in that conversation where he asks her, you know, what normal thing would she want to do, or what she really wanted to do with her life. And she says marine salvage. And then he thinks she's joking. But she's like, no, I'm serious. I watched them. I saw this documentary and they were down in the Caribbean and they were finding gold and they were bringing up buried treasure. And that's what I want to do. And then, you know, it's so random, but it's kind of a normal, it's not really a normal job, but it's not a job that you would first think of course. And then she admits that she doesn't even know how to swim and she's never been in the ocean before.
Yeah, definitely. But regardless, she has a dream and she has a hope, and that's what she wants to do. And, you know, of course, he just chalks it off as to what.
And there's a lot of that in in the next episode. You know, it's Curtis who's talking about wanting to get back to a normal life, you know, when he and Frank are on the rooftop. So, yeah,
he was mentioning how he looked forward to taxes and everything else. That would lead me to my number 3, which would be Frank getting information from the bartender and using the severed thumb to open the phone up and then being able to, you know, putting it in the glass of water and says, "Hey, Tony, call it a tip." That just like floored me, and it was like so much Frank Castle, even from the comic book in some respects.
Yeah. The only
It sounds something like you would do, you
the
know?
only problem I had with it was the first thought I had when he unlocked the phone with that guy's thumb is I thought, turn off the thumb lock thing. Just go into settings and turn it off so you don't have to do that again, you know. But yet there's definitely, it was a visual thing definitely for the girl, and because she says something like, if you cut anything else off from him, you know, I'll be happy, and like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's definitely a very Punisher thing though, to carry that thumb around until he doesn't need it anymore. So
Yeah, exactly. But I found it amusing, and I thought, that is perfect for this show.
Exactly. Yeah. And that leads right into my number 2, which is word on the street. You know, the word on the street about the bounty on Amy and Frank went out pretty quick. And because, you know, as soon as he walks out of that bar, those guys follow him, and he meets him kind of in the alleyway, and they're like, well, where's the girl, Frank? And so suddenly he knows that somebody's after them. There was one thing that I was a little confused about, and that was when Frank goes to the apartment building and he saves the girl there at towards the end, he got that text message with an address. I thought that was the address of the warehouse that Billy and his crew were at. Because remember, we see that scene with the one vet guy who's pretending to be homeless, and he leans against and he kind of pees on the fence, you know, and and so I thought that was the address that he sent him, but it couldn't be. It had to be the girl sending her address to Frank. I mean, do you think, because there's no other way he would have known she was in trouble and where she was? Or what do you,
Very
what
true.
do you think? Do you think I'm correct in that and saying that that's the address?
I thought the same thing coming the later scenes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then I just loved that, along with all that word on the street and these guys coming after them, that she uses that move that Frank taught her about taking the gun away from the guy, and that she was able to pull the trigger, even though she didn't kill the guy. She was able to pull the trigger. Of course, then she kicks her friend on the way out, and Frank gives kind of a look of approval about her kicking the friend. I thought that was great.
My number 2 would be Curtis recruiting his group members to find Billy and his crew. The vets were not happy to hear about what Curtis did to Jake, but then realized it was Billy they were eager to help, you know, so they were more eager to help out. Because, you know, Jake basically, you know, he died because of Billy.
Exactly.
And yeah, they came to and come to realize, and Curtis was willing and fortunate enough to, you know, trust in these guys like any crew member would.
And it mirrors, that scene really mirrors the scene in the next episode that Billy has with his guys, when he's telling them about the Punisher, and he's getting them kind of psyched up to try to kill the Punisher, because he says some of those same things or similar things to what Curtis said to his guys. You know, and I thought that was really interesting as I watched these episodes back to back today, that there's a lot of stuff that's set up in 9 that we pay off in 10. There's a lot of mirrored kind of situations in 9 that we see in 10. And that's, like I said, that conversation that Billy has with his crew when he's talking about the fact that Frank had was his brother, but he's betrayed him, or all this. He's like, Frank did this to me, and I don't know why he did this to me, and all that. And so it really mirrors those two scenes are really good. And that's really what my number 1 is just there was a lot of things this episode. Episode 9 had a lot of setup for the next episode, for episode 10.
Yeah, which is what we're lucky about when it comes to being Netflix, because you don't have to wait a week. You could just binge watch it or something. So that's something I'll miss. That would lead me to my number 1, and that would be, you know, basically the same, the end setup, but oh my, Madani and the doctor talking about Billy. That whole conversation was crazy.
Yeah.
Them getting drunk together and everything.
I had forgotten that scene started in episode 9. That we see, because they repeat that scene in episode 10, where
they continue it on.
Where they're talking about where she says something about, you know, you should be drinking more, or if that's what you think, then you should drink. And the doctor's like, well, let me get some wine. And then they do that same scene, or like I said, they continue it on in the next episode. So yeah.
Yeah. And then we go to the pastor, Robbie, going to his mobster, looking for help with Frank and Amy. And, you know, I for the hit out, I believe, from my understanding, on Frank, but he's going to his old roots. And we don't see that a little bit, but we get a little bit more of an insight of what happened to him and why he changed his ways. But, obviously he took a job as a pastor and doing what he did in a wacky way for those that hired him, which would be the Schultzes. And Amy and Frank coming together was a big one for me. That one scene you were talking about with, Frank's nod of approval.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that one scene was pretty cool. The last scene was pretty much a setup of what Frank wants to do, if you think about it. Taking care of Billy, then taking care of the Schultzes, as Amy states, a cluster cluck?
Fluster cluck.
Yeah.
Fluster cluck is what it should
Okay.
Yeah, that there at the end where he basically lays out what he's going to do. He says, I got to take care of Bill first, and then we'll take care of the Schultzes, and that'll get you in the clear, and I'll get you back to where you can have like a normal life. So,
did you have any specific quotes?
I had a couple quotes, and my first one is from that conversation at the beginning. He says, "Let me be what I'm meant to be." He's talking about being the Punisher, and then at the end when he says, "I'm not the one that does the killing. I'm not the one that gets killed. I'm the one that does the killing." So,
yeah. The only thing I had was, "This isn't a Punisher pity party, Frank," from Amy.
I love that. Yeah, we don't sit around on a Friday night doing this,
Exactly. And he's just pouring out gin or
whatever it was that he was drinking. It almost looked like the same kind of bottle as what the mobster had, but it couldn't be because he said it was expensive stuff, and I can't believe they'd be in the trailer drinking expensive stuff. But yeah, and you kind of indicated the other quote that I had, which is the one where she's talking to Curtis and she says, "My thing is just sitting around waiting," and because he said, "Well, you've got a thing, and my thing is just waiting," so.
Yeah.
Did you had some extra notes here of things we didn't bring up?
Yeah, well, pretty much, Silly Billy doesn't know that the doctor is using him. He really thinks the doctor loves him. The doctor is trying to convince Billy can get through to Madani because they were once together. It's kind of like that manipulative look. But the doctor doesn't know her own bond with Billy. The evidence is in her face when she tries to convince him to use Madani. She has that weird, sinister look in one scene when, she's trying to talk him into it. It was the weirdest thing. The only other thing I had would be the episode seemed a little scattered with everyone going on their own direction. Madani and hers, Frank on his trying to find Billy and his crew, Amy trying to run away because after her and Curtis's conversation, she thinks she's just being used, like I said before, and Curtis trying to get to Billy and Billy's crew with the vets. So it seemed like a whole split, and then they all just come together in some way.
Yeah. And the only other thing I had that we really didn't talk about was that moment there in Madani's apartment. Billy finds the notebook that she stole from the hospital, and then of course we've already talked about her and the doctor setting up for the next episode that we're gonna see some more about. So episode 10 was titled "The Dark Hearts of Men." And it's a good title for a very dark episode. We kind of get 4 stories that are rolled into this one amazing, less than an hour. In fact, as I commented to Mark before we started recording, episode 10 is actually the shortest episode of this whole season. We have this story of Madani and Dr. Dumont having a conversation that takes place actually before the events of this episode, because there's a really quick, and I had to rewind it the first time I watched it, that they reveal that that's 24 hours before the thing that's going on where Frank and Curtis are talking in the rain, that the conversation between Madani and the doctor takes place the day before all of that happened. And that's a very important point to know, because at the end, when we see Billy come in and talk to the doctor, she says, "I know how you can get to Castle now." And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But it's very important to understand that conversation between Madani and Dr. Dumont actually happened the day before the events of episode 10. We get to see John Pilgrim as he deals with some of his personal issues. We see Curtis dealing with Billy's guys outside of Valhalla, and we see Frank dealing with the guys inside Valhalla. And the episode ends with Frank confronted by the police after doing something that he never thought he would ever do. And I'm sure we're going to get into that in our top fives. I guess it's 10 because it's 5 for me and 5 for you. Why don't you go ahead and start? What's your number 5?
My number 5 would be the fight with the mobster and the pastor. Very gruesome. You know, showed that he went back to his old ways after the fight in the present with the drink, cocaine, and the pills to accomplish his mission, all brought up due to dealing with his past life. It was very eerie. If he was tough now, what was he like before, you know? If he goes back to his old ways, what are we in store for, you know? It was kind of weird to see because he's always repenting before, you know, he's hurting himself like in a closet that one time with the kid.
Right.
It's like he's torturing himself. Now he goes back and he counters these people. And when the mobster brings up, you know, it's like, oh, you'd be the loudest person. You do this, you do that. Basically, you know, he'd be the first person to do something crazier and some sort of action. And then the mobster saw the pastor as a broken man and thinking his beliefs weren't enough to, you know, be taken care of, that he's not the man he used to be. But unfortunately for the mobster, he didn't realize, oh no, that could come out at any given moment, even if he's sober.
Yeah. And this actually was my number 4, but I'll switch to my number 5 because it is John Pilgrim, kind of his descent, that we see him go into darkness. Like you said, he's drinking, he's snorting cocaine after the fight. And I'm sure part of the reason why he's probably doing the cocaine is he's probably hurting. He's probably got a lot of pain, but it was gruesome. We see him try to do, kind of the doctor, do his own kind of doctoring with wrapping his t-shirt around his ribs, you know, and he's looking at his head and all these kind of things. It was really, that fight was just gruesome when he tries to bring his jaw back. Was that what he was doing? Was his jaw was knocked out of place and he was trying to move it back into position? I was just like, oh, I cringed every time when he did that. And then, you know, we see him with the girl and she's doing her job on him. And, and he's talking about how, and another key theme that I didn't put in the notes, but there's a lot of talk and a lot of things about brotherhood in this. And he talks about that brotherhood that is just an illusion he thinks of. And then we see a flashback of him talking to his wife and telling her the truth about himself, telling her what his name is, telling her all the things he's done, that he's done every sin you can imagine. He's done it. But then at the end, she, you know, in the vision he's having or hallucination or dream or whatever, she says, finish this. So I don't know if that was a real memory of a conversation he had with her, or if maybe that's a conversation that he wants to have with her when he finishes this job. That was the only thing that was a little confusing for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my number 5, was the same thing that John Pilgrim stuff. So what was your number 4?
Well, it leads into the same thing. You actually just spoke about it. You know, him in the hotel, it takes it upon himself to invade someone's party, though. Afterwards, with the hookers, the blow, the booze, kills the guy and then uses the hooker, but then tries to preach while the hooker is doing some sexual things to him. But then we, you know, that creepy scene with the wife, you know, trying to talk sense into him. But it was just wacky. Yeah. I think that guy is really messed up.
Yeah. Do you think he killed it? It didn't show him kill the guy and the other hookers. It just showed him put a gun in the guy's face and then push him into the room. So we don't know what their fate was. I mean, he might have killed him. I don't know. But it was definitely,
it led me to believe that, you know, he kind of dismissed
could
them.
have. Yeah. It was definitely a messed up scene. And my number 4 though, is that cold open scene with that force recon. I guess that was a force recon initiation or something that they were doing where they had to,
there was a hazing kind of initiation for all the guys.
It had to be something like that because, you know, there is a real brotherhood in the military, but I never saw anything like that in my time. But we did have some messed up traditions, so that definitely could have been something of a, you know, like an initiation or a hazing or something, definitely, because they all, you know, they shouted their names, and then, you know, Russo ran through the gauntlet first. And then Frank runs through the gauntlet and he gets to the end of the gauntlet and then Billy punches him. The only thing we didn't see Frank get to punch Billy. That was a little, you know, seemed a little messed up, but
yeah, that was, yeah.
So where are we at? What is your next one? Are we on your number 3? Yeah.
Yeah. So Madani and the doctor talking about Frank and Billy. The doctor trying to talk to Madani and thinking on her side about Billy, but Madani shuts her down about Frank, basically telling the doctor of who Frank is and why he is doing what he does. They get drunk while talking about the differences between Frank and Billy. It seemed so intense because one was trying to justify the other. Like, the doctor was justifying Billy's actions, whereas Madani was trying to justify, Frank's actions. And Billy wasn't working out. I'm sorry.
No, well, and I actually, this was my number 3 as well, was this conversation between Dumont and Madani. And, you can see there's definitely differences between how they each view Castle and Billy differently. And like you said, Krista thinks that she can kind of redeem Billy, and Madani believes that Frank has a certain amount of nobility in what he does, or a certain honor to what he does. And as I mentioned earlier, that's what we find out at the end. We find out that the whole thing was just a facade of the doctor trying to get some sort of information to give to Billy so that he could figure out how to break Frank. And that really disappointed me, because I was really hoping, you've been talking all along about how the doctor is kind of sinister and all this. And part of me was really hoping that she wasn't, that she was really like, when she talks to Madani, she says, we all have our own personal hells. And Madani says, well, what's your hell? And she says, well, my hell is thinking that I can get one of you out of yours, kind of thing. And we find out there at the end when she talks to Billy that it was all just a fake, just a chance to get some information.
Yeah, definitely. So that would bring me my number 2.
Yes.
Well, Frank actually going into the warehouse to go after Billy and his crew, being ambushed and having to take the hits while the lights going on and off with the music blaring. Mm-hmm. Similar to the opening scene during that whole camaraderie or hazing, as it were, with Billy and Frank and the Marines, and having to go down that line, taking hits from your own squad, showing trust. In this case, it was basically a massacre of Frank being pummeled before Billy gets to talk to him. Well, Frank is bloody and all, welted up and everything else. Then we see Frank do what he does best. And I think this is the bloodiest we've seen Frank since like season 1, maybe.
Yeah, it's for sure an intense, that fight scene is actually my number 1. And so I've got a few notes about it as well. But my number 2 kind of plays into that same kind of sequence of events there. And that's those women that were killed at the end. And I realized that all through the episode, we're seeing Billy watching Frank and Curtis from the other building, which that surprised me too, that they didn't notice that they were not on the highest ground. You would think that would have been something they would have figured out, was, wait a minute, we need to be on the highest ground because somebody could be observing us. And they never really realized that. But, he knows what Frank's code is. And I think we're going to find out later that those women were already dead before Frank fired into that room. Because there's a very quick exchange between Billy and one of his gang members, where the gang member says something like when Billy tells him to take the women home, and then he says, where are the others? And the gang member says something about they're right where you want them to be, or something to that extent. So I believe they were either already killed in that room and kind of set up to make Frank think he killed him, or maybe they could have been, set up, just in such a way so that they knew Frank would shoot at that room. And because remember, and this is nothing I didn't notice until the second watch, okay, Frank made it a point to tell Curtis, you tell me when those women leave, because I don't want to go in there until they're out. And that's why there was that was such an important point there at the end when Billy says, okay, because remember Curtis says the women, he said they're drunk by midnight and the women leave by 2 a.m. They never stay over. And so that's why Billy told the guy to take those women away. But then for some reason, there were some women left there. So I think we're going to find out that either those women were already dead before Frank fired at them, or they were set up specifically to be killed by Frank. So,
yeah, good catch. I didn't catch that part. Wow.
Yeah, it took me the second view to really figure that whole sequence of events out. Now, I had a suspicion after the first viewing that that it wasn't Frank's fault, but I didn't know for sure until this second viewing. I firmly believe that was not Frank's fault.
Yeah. So that would bring me to my number one.
Yeah.
Well, basically that ending.
Mm-hmm.
Frank's world was thrown upside down with one play by Billy and the Doctor. Well, basically with the setup, as we know. Billy twisting Frank's mind during the firefight at the end, which resulted in what you just spoke about, the 2 casualties from what I can see. Mm-hmm. 2 bodies of women who are found in the dark office that Frank was shooting in. And it's like, they died from his gunfire, or maybe exactly what you're theorizing, due to, Billy doing what he does. And it's Billy's ruse that really got Frank, set up.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, and that's my number one is just that whole scene there, the whole fight scene there at the end with the lights and the music. And, the fact that Frank walked into a trap, I'm a little, it's a little, I guess we can kind of forgive Frank for it because he really is focused on going after Billy. And that's why he didn't see this as a trap. But I have to think that if he had a clearer mind about Billy, he would have known, wait a minute, there's one entrance in to this place and it's a tunnel and I don't know what I'm getting into, and then he walks into this empty room that all the lights are out and starts getting this fast attack where the lights and the music come on and then somebody, hits him with a crowbar or a big wrench or a knife. And, of course, but then, like you said, we see that he gets his second wind there after, Billy talks to him and he turns berserker. I mean, he basically goes berserker on these guys. He bites one guy's ear off or the guy's nose off. I couldn't see exactly what it was, or he bites his throat out. I'm not sure. I know he spit out some skin. So
yeah, I saw that too.
He either bit out the guy's throat or he bit his ear off or what. But, this is we've not seen him this gruesome. I want to say maybe the second to the last episode of the first season when all those guys got into his building there and he attacked them and he had all the different guns stashed around.
Yeah. Or in Daredevil when the prison scene.
Right. In Daredevil, I've forgotten about that. Right. I need to rewatch Daredevil. But, of course, Russo escapes just as the police arrive. And we have Frank standing there, like you said, with those 2 dead bodies. And we don't know for sure, whether Frank shot them, whether Billy's guys shot them or what. But
yeah, cool.
So I had one quote from this episode that I really keyed in on. That was when Dr. Dumont and Madani are talking, and they're talking about Frank's code, and Madani says that he doesn't kill the innocent, and Dumont says, "Who decides who's innocent?" I thought that was a good quote.
Yeah, mine would be the Dumont saying, "So he's exempt from hell because of his archaic idea of chivalry." And Madani says, no, he's exempt because if he did the things that Billy has done, he would be burning in hell.
Yeah, I like that whole thing. The only thing I had that we really haven't brought up yet is I liked there at the beginning when Curtis is telling Frank that he's different from Billy because he cares about people.
Yeah,
and that's a big thing through this whole episode is the differences between Billy and Frank and Curtis. And I don't know, I'm still not 100% sure where Curtis came into during their military career because we didn't, he was a medic and Frank points out that he and Billy were trained to kill, whereas Curtis was trained to save lives. And that's what we see at the end there when he doesn't want to kill those other vets. And in fact, he tries to save the one guy's life who he shot in the leg. And so it's interesting that Curtis, though, is able to point out to Frank, no, Billy, I think he says something along the lines that Billy, we don't know if Billy was like that the whole time. Billy was a psychopath who was pretending the whole time to just care about us. And again, it was one of those weird conversations when Frank said something about the fact that, if those guys were back, that he didn't care about the vets now that they were back home. But in war, he said, yeah, I'd take a bullet for him, but now I won't. And we see that Curtis is saying, no, you do care about those guys. You do care. He doesn't kill the guy outside. He ties him up before he goes into the tunnel. But of course, when he goes berserker, he just kills all of them. He kills that woman, who was part of the group, which I thought was interesting that just like in the first season, Billy had women in his crew. He has a woman in his crew this time as well.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, that's a wrap for that stuff.
I think so. We got through it, and you've got some comic talk news here, though.
That I do. Well, this week, despite of being sick and having to work a couple of days as such, including today. So Wednesday, I was able to go on Comic Book Day, which is new releases, and get Detective Comics issue 1000. So it came out, everybody, and it's very hard. There's a lot of rarities out of this monumentous issue. There's a variants that are I forget the name of the artist that my friend wanted to get, but Alex Ross, that's who it was. Yes, there's an Alex Ross variant version, which is literally the depiction of the first Action Comics. Detective Comics issue that Batman premiered in.
Oh, wow.
And it's his version and idea. It's very hard to come by. You have to actually go to Alex Ross's website to pre-order it. And I didn't, Eric didn't, and we were regretting it. So I put in a pre-order for it just in case that night because I didn't see it at my comic shop, but there's a ton of them out there. They're great. This was a big event. I suggest everybody to go out there and get it. There's a story in there that Kevin Smith wrote, and I thought it was just cool to read. Now, mind you, I walked away with maybe 8 comics of the same thing, but they're all different covers and everything, but they're all cool covers. So I would suggest, I got the one I liked the most was Bernie Wrightson. The Alex Ross is the one I wanted to get, and there was one that reminded me of the Dark Knight series. So yeah, that was those were the 2 major picks. The only other comic news that I saw that was pretty popular, Jay and Silent Bob reboot has completed its filming. So everything is in Kevin Smith's hand now, and to giving us a movie we've been wanting for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I love Kevin Smith's movies, and I've seen some of the tweets and the Instagram stuff that he's been sending out. He sent out a thing that I guess Rosario Dawson was brought in. Was able to have a part on this Jay and Silent Bob reboot. So it'll be interesting to see what part she plays. If they just are remaking the same story as Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, or if it's going to be a different story. I know it does have, what's her name? And the actress's name is escaping me now. The one that played, Jay's love interest.
Oh, yes.
Shannon Elizabeth, is in it, I believe. So.
Yep. And Joey Lauren Adams, I think, isn't it?
I would hope. I don't know. I have not seen a full list. I just knew that I've seen a few of the tweets and stuff that, Kevin's been sending out. So
yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I was sick this week. I could not do the Walking Dead talk through, but Steve was kind enough to step in for me this week. Thank you, Steve, for doing that.
It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Brian and I covered this last episode of The Walking Dead, The Calm Before. And so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say next week for The Storm. If I'm invited to sit in on that one, I may, if I have the time. But man, I've been
You had fun with it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was a good time. It really was. It was a fun. It was a good episode. I liked it, and I can't wait to hear how it sounds.
That's cool. It just uploaded. I just noticed. So.
Yeah, I saw, and I shared it out to my Facebook page as well so that people can see it. A couple other podcast recommendations that we have. The podcast Strange Indeed from the Podcasting Network has started their review of the Umbrella Academy, and I've watched the first 3 episodes of that show and really, really like it. I just finished listening to We Have to Go Back, the Lost Revisited podcast with Ben and Kristen that they do from our network, from Next Level. And next week, I have a chance to set in on House Podcastica, which is the Game of Thrones rewatch podcast that I will be guest hosting with Kristen on that podcast next week. So look for that to come out in the next week and a half or so.
Wow, that is cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be episode 7, season 7, episode 7 rewatch, which is the last episode until the new stuff starts up again. So I'm excited to do that podcast, and I can't wait to have a full episode. We're not just a 2-minute voicemail.
And we also like to recommend to the Walking Dead cast on Podcastiga. It's the one that started many of us into podcasting. So, just a little shout out to Jason Kabasi and Karen Morvay. What are we up to for the next episode? Shall we do episodes 11 and 12 or do 11 and 12 and 13?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What do you want to try to do? Do you want to try to cover 3 episodes in one show? Do you want to try to do that next week? I know you're going to be busy next week with Walking Dead talk through, and I'm going to be busy getting ready for the Game of Thrones one.
Well,
what do you think?
What I can do is put in one of our fillers, and then we could take up after that, and we have enough time.
Let's do that then, because I think that'll be a good idea. Put a filler episode in there next week, and then we'll come back and do episodes 11 and 12. And then the next week we'll do episode 13 and review Endgame. Because I think by then, if the calendar in my head is working out correctly, I think Endgame will be out at that point.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
We can do 11 and 12 together, and then do episode 13 in conjunction with a Endgame review.
Cool. Awesome. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So that way, I brought it up and I mentioned it on the post this week on Facebook regarding filler episodes. And I figured, all right, I'll do Spider-Man 1977, just an idea and review of what it's like back then, what I think of it now, a little comparison to the other Spider-Man live actions that we've gotten in recent history up until now, and just give an overall view. I'll probably do the same thing with the Incredible Hulk, Captain America, and a few others, but I'm sure you want to be on there with Captain America, Steve.
Yeah, with some of them, I'll try to jump in there. I remember the Captain America TV show, and I remember liking it. I remember him with I love the homage to it, and I'm sure it's in the comic books as well. Him putting the shield on the front of his
motorcycle. Yeah.
But I really like the homage to it in the Avengers movies, where he puts that shield on the front of the motorcycle and stuff. So.
Yeah, so I figured that would be a good idea. So that way, just in case, like Steve was sick last week, we didn't do anything, but this week I got sick and I realized, oh no, I have 2 podcasts to do this week. So Steve was kind enough and feeling better and filling in for me for the Walking Dead talk through, but I felt the need. It's like, I really don't want to not do this week. So
yeah. So next week, let's do that, because we both got extra podcasts we've got to take care of next week. So
cool. So I'll be recording this weekend and filling that in, and it won't be too long, people. Trust me. It'll probably be about maybe a half hour, 45 minutes worth of information. Just me talking. Yeah. But I will throw in some cool audio in there from the show, interesting ideas and thoughts, and I'll get some interesting information about Nick Hammond and where he is and what he's doing lately, too. So with that, we should talk about how people could get in contact with us.
Well, you can get in touch with us through our Facebook group, which is I'm not even going to try to do that. It's facebook.com/panels to pixels. People, you can find us, Panels to Pixels, spell it out. You can send us an email at panelstopixels1@gmail.com. That's panels to pixels 1. The TO is spelled out in the middle there, and then the number 1@gmail.com.
And where else could listeners hear us?
Well, as we just talked about, the fact that Mark is co-host on the Walking Dead Talk Through with Brian Malash on Golden Spiral Media. I was able to set in on that podcast this week, and so it was a little surreal. And then I will be setting in on House Podcastica's Game of Thrones rewatch next week as well.
Yeah, so you're getting around. Next up for you would probably be Strange Indeed.
Yeah, Strange Indeed, or we'll see what they've got. They've got that one pretty well locked up, I think. So
I think
we'll
so
see.
too.
We'll see though.
It'll be cool though.
Yeah.
You can now hear Panels to Pixels on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. So while you guys are listening or there, please leave some sort of feedback And give us a rating if you can, too. It would be awesome to get something out of that.
Excellent. And once we wrap up The Punisher Season 2, we will be telling you what our next project is going to be. Let's see what other show we can kill.
Or was killed.
Or was killed.
Yeah. But there are so many things out there we could talk about. But I know you have some ideas. I have some ideas. We'll talk that in between.
Yeah.
And with that, thanks everybody for listening. I am Mark.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Panels to Pixels, everyone. Good night.
Good night.